pollution in India. Located in northern India, the Ganges River starts in the Himalayas and ends at the Bay of Bengal. Stretching over 1,060 miles, the Ganges holds great significance to the people of India. Given to the Hindu people as a gift from God, Hinduism refers to the water of the Ganges as the nectar of immortality, for the Hindus consider the water sacred and holy. Just touching the water purifies a person of their sins. It is a Hindu tradition to offer flowers, food, grain, garlands of marigold or pink lotuses to the Ganges daily. On special occasions, people offer oil lamps as well. People try to wash in the river of heaven every day to cleanse themselves of their sins or to cure themselves from illness. One of the most important Hindu traditions concerning the Ganges is the placing of a loved one's body or ashes into the river. By placing the deceased in the river, the dead soul is purified and may go to heaven. This important final step in a person's life, however, has contributed to the pollution of the Ganges River. Because of rapid population, industry, and urbanization growth, the amount of pollution in the Ganges River has skyrocketed. Hair from barbershops along the banks of the river, the water waste from tanneries and other factories within the cities, animal and human fecal matter, trash, and diseased dead or alive people and animals pollute the waters. Industrial chemicals, such as chromium sulfate, arsenic, cadmium, mercury, sulfuric acid, chemical dyes, and other heavy metals, cause cancer, skin problems, other respiratory illnesses, or death to those who make contact with the river's water. Many of the Ganges visitors contract diseases such as cholera, typhoid, hepatitis, or amoebic dysentery. 10 to 12 million gallons of raw sewage is dumped into the river each day. Devoid of aquatic life for over a decade now, the Ganges River, known for its purity, takes on the face of toxic muck, known as as opposed to the nectar of God. The pollution of the Ganges River is the main cause for skin problems, some disabilities, diseases, and infant mortality rates. Its waters used for bathing, drinking, irrigation, and holy rituals have become too dangerous for these activities to continue safely. And pollution has even leached into the tap water of many homes. India has made the Ganges River its septic tank, but officials are now trying to cease the neglect without causing arguments between environmentalists and devout Hindus. Efforts through the Sankat Mokan Foundation, an organization that raises awareness about the pollution of the Ganges, the Swachhta Ganga, a government-funded program to clean the Ganges, and the Ganga Action Plan, have made some improvements, but not enough to save the Ganges River from a slow, polluted death.
The Ganges River isn't the only polluted water source in India. Groundwater pollution is also a huge problem. Don't believe us? Take a look at this video taken by BBC.
The state government supplies clean water by tanker and pipeline, but campaigners say thousands still depend on groundwater pumps. We took samples to test in the UK. We found extremely high concentrations of pollutant carbon tetrachloride, nearly 1,000 times the World Health Organization maximum, and causes cancer and liver damage.
Groundwater supplies the needs of 80% of rural India and 50% of urban India. However, much of the groundwater in India is contaminated. Pollutants will leach down through the soil into the water table in their groundwater. Groundwater is most often used for irrigation, but often can be used for drinking, bathing, widespread aquaculture, and other needs. In poorer regions, the groundwater is drawn up using a treadle pump. This widespread contamination is similar to the crisis in China. A recent study in Taiwan showed drinking this groundwater for 2 decades can triple the risk of heart attack and stroke. Drinking India's contaminated groundwater can lead to cancer and Blackfoot disease, which later leads to gangrene. The main problem is in West Bengal. The arsenic poisoning was first noticed in 1976. A large amount of pathogens are found in the highly polluted Ganges River. Sometimes groundwater pollution occurs from man-made disasters, like the incident in Bhopal. In December 1984, the Union Carbide plant in Bhopal, India, accidentally released around 55 tons of the chemical methyl isocyanate, MIC, into the atmosphere. In 3 days, 8,000 people had died. 27 years later, the people of Bhopal still greatly feel the effects of the Union Carbide plant disaster. That night, 500,000 people enlisted at MIC and survived. Since then, a high number of children have been born mentally and physically disabled, including a high rate of birth defects. Thousands depend on this water for drinking and bathing. This tragedy calls into question, is it morally right for America to outsource their dirty work? India is in the transitional stage of development. Also, how great of a responsibility does India have to warn the people of potential dangers? Could this incident have been prevented? The income gap is a huge deal in India. This is the Indian rupee. Looks like it's worth a lot, right? Wrong. 1 Indian rupee can only buy about 10 US cents. In fact, India has one of the largest income gaps in the world because of their struggling economy. While India may have 4.5% of the world's billionaires, rating it at number 4 on the world list, it also has 836 million people living below the poverty line. The poverty line stands at less than 50 cents per day. So what does the income gap have to do with water pollution? Well, India spends a lot of money on programs for the poor. In 2006, India spent 28.6 billion American dollars on helping poverty, or roughly 2% of India's gross domestic product. The programs that India tries to install include food distribution and health initiatives. However, the World Bank suspects there are leakages in government funds trying to help the poor. This term refers to the middleman stealing grain or money before it can reach poor homes. An estimated 59% of grain does not make it to poor households as it is intended to make it to. All this money used up to repairing poverty could be used to further improve the water systems in India. Also, because so many people are poor, they do not have access to basic sanitation. They therefore dispose of waste in inappropriate places, such as public water systems.
At which demographic transition stage is India today? The demographic transition stages refer to the transition from high to low birth and death rates as a country progresses from a pre-industrial state to industrialized economic system. There are 4 phases to demographic transition. In phase 1, death and birth rates are high and keep relatively in balance, thus making the population growth quite slow. Today, India is in phase 2, a stage where crude birth rates exceeds the crude death rate. Because the crude birth rate exceeds the crude death rate, the population growth is rapid. Look at the population pyramid. Because of the larger base of the triangular shape, younger generations have boomed. This will result in a rapid increase in population. So where is India going from here? After further development, urbanization, increases in wages, increases in women's rights, more education, and access to contraceptives, the crude birth rate drops. After the crude birth rate and crude death rate both reach a low level, the rates balance out and lead to a stable population with relatively little growth. We will be traveling to India this summer on Holton's Global Education trip. Here are a few things to look out for while traveling in India. Keep an eye out for water pollution. Look out for pollution such as trash, bodies, and people bathing in the Ganges River. Notice if any of the tap water people use, and maybe even you yourself use, is dirtied or polluted. Keep an eye out for municipal solid waste littering the ground, which could be picked up by the Ganges or other bodies of water. Keeping these aspects in mind, dig a bit deeper, such as how much does clean water cost? What are people's reactions to the pollution? Are they fazed or are they not fazed? Is the conservation of water an important aspect in an Indian's everyday life? And does pollution act as an inhibitor for religious rituals concerning water?
Here are some questions for you to consider about our presentation. After we share our opinions, pause the video and discuss in groups how you feel about each of these questions.
How does India's huge population contribute to its huge water pollution problem? We believe that if India had a lesser population, there wouldn't be quite so much water pollution. Right now, India's population is about 4 times the size of the US, but with only 1/3 the land mass. And as you can see, the 2050 projection of the population is about 1.4 the size it is now. This leads to the income gap we talked about earlier, and the 836 million people living below the poverty line, which means that these 836 million people don't have access to basic sanitation. So, They dispose of waste in the most convenient way possible, such as local rivers. How would water pollution in India be affected if India was in a higher demographic stage or did not have so much of an income gap? We believe that if India was in a higher demographic stage, they would have a lower birth rate and a higher death rate. Currently, India is in phase 2, so they have a higher birth rate, which leads to rapid population growth. As we discussed before, we believe that a higher population leads to more water pollution. So, if India was in a higher demographic stage or did not have so much of an income gap, they would not have quite as much water pollution. Do you think the groundwater pollution levels affect India's development? Why or why not? We believe that the groundwater pollution levels actually pauses India's development. Water cannot be used for proper agriculture or irrigation. Agriculture and irrigation promotes having an agricultural output, which leads to further development of the country. Lastly, as an American, how much of a responsibility do you think the Indian government has to clean up and set restrictions on pollution in the Ganges River? What about the concept of separation of church and state? India is a secular state, for reference. What about the health of the people using the Ganges River as a drinking or bathing water source? We believe that as a secular state, India should set restrictions on pollution except for religious purposes. This way, India will not infer on the religious beliefs of the people using the Ganges River for those purposes, but they can also prevent pollution.
Now let's take a look at the 3 S's of environmental science. Let's start with sustainability. When people fail to take care of the waterways in their country, the ecosystem is threatened and leads to dead zones and decreases in biodiversity. With waterways unusable because of pollution, the country loses one source of ecosystem capital. In order to prevent such losses, environmental laws and regulations must be enforced. Stewardship. Stewardship is the actions made for health and well-being of the common good. Because of water pollution and lack of sanitation, Indians are, quote, held back from achieving their physical and intellectual potential, end quote. Scientific method. Scientific research is key for determining the chemicals and pollutants contaminating the water, and how these pollutants affect environmental and human health. We would like to give credit to our sources. Thank you for watching our presentation. Have a great time in India.